Hey guys, welcome back to another trip through humanity's greatest hits. Before we start, I need you to do something for me. Go adjust your thermostat to exactly where you want it. Nice and comfortable. Maybe grab a warm blanket while you're at it. Trust me, by the end of this you'll want to hug your heating system and possibly write it a love letter. And if you're the type who enjoys watching other people suffer from the comfort of your climate-controlled paradise, smash that like button. You're about to feel very, very grateful for central heating. Atmospheric music fades to something cold and medieval. Wind, maybe some distant wolves. Now turn down the lights. Feel that slight chill when the warm air stops hitting your skin. Good, you're going to spend tonight one long, brutal night trying not to freeze to death in medieval Europe circa 1348. It's January. It's below freezing. And you're about to learn that room temperature is a modern luxury that your ancestors could only dream about. Literally, because dreams of warmth were probably the only warm thing they had. The year is 1348. And winter has arrived with the subtlety of a mace to the face. The Black Death swept through Europe a few years back, which means your charming little village is now home to about half as many people as it used to be. The good news? More firewood to go around. The bad news? Fewer people to help you not die of hypothermia. You're waking up, and I use that term loosely because you haven't really slept in what passes for a bed. It's a wooden frame with rope stretched across it, topped with a straw-filled mattress that's about as thick as a modern paperback book and considerably less comfortable. The straw has compressed over the months into something that feels like sleeping on a bag of twigs, and those twigs are now frozen solid. Your breath is visible in the air, inside your house. That's right. It's so cold that your own exhalation is condensing into little puffs of vapor, like you're a human chimney. The walls around you, made of wattle and daub, basically sticks and mud, have about as much insulating power as a screen door. Ice crystals have formed on the inside of the walls where your breath is frozen against the clay. The single room you share with your family feels like the inside of a meat locker. Except meat lockers are probably warmer and definitely better maintained. Your parents are huddled together in the corner. Your siblings are pressed against you for warmth. And everyone's shivering so hard that the entire bed frame is vibrating like a medieval massage chair from hell. Outside, you can hear the wind howling through the village with a sound that's part banshee wail, part angry wolf pack. It's finding every crack, every gap, every microscopic opening in your dwelling, and using them to deliver personal messages of frozen misery directly to your skin. Time to get up and start your day. Assuming you can convince your muscles to cooperate. Your body has spent the night in survival mode, shutting down blood flow to your extremities to keep your vital organs from freezing. Your fingers and toes feel like chunks of ice attached to your body, and moving them sends sharp pains shooting up your arms and legs. You sit up slowly, every joint protesting with the creaky resistance of a rusty gate. Your spine feels like someone filled it with frozen marbles overnight, and your neck has locked up so completely that turning your head requires moving your entire torso. The straw beneath you crackles with frost, and when you shift position, ice crystals fall from the mattress like the world's most depressing snow. Your clothes, which you've been wearing continuously for the past several months, have frozen to your body overnight. The fabric has absorbed your sweat and breath moisture, then turned it into a personal ice suit. When you try to move, the cloth cracks and tears, creating new ventilation holes you definitely don't need. The air you're breathing burns your lungs. It's so cold that each inhalation feels like swallowing liquid nitrogen, and your throat feels raw and scraped from breathing air that has no business being inside a human body. Your nose has stopped running, not because the cold cured your perpetual medieval sniffles, but because everything up there has frozen solid. Your family is in similar condition, looking like a collection of human popsicles who've somehow maintained the ability to shiver. Your mother's lips have turned blue. Your father's beard has icicles hanging from it. And your youngest sibling is making small whimpering sounds that might be attempts at communication or might just be the sound of someone slowly freezing to death. The fire, if you can call it that, died out hours ago. The few precious pieces of wood you managed to scrape together burned out sometime around midnight, leaving nothing but cold ashes and the lingering smell of smoke that makes you want to weep for what you've lost. Let's talk about heating. Because heating is literally the difference between life and death right now. In the modern world, you flip a switch or turn a dial and magical warmth appears. In medieval times, you need three things: wood, a way to light it, and the skills not to burn down your house in the process. Unfortunately, you're currently 0 for 3. Wood is expensive. Not I should shop around for a better deal expensive. More like I might have to sell a child expensive. The forests around your village have been stripped bare by generations of people who also didn't want to freeze to death. And what's left is carefully guarded by people who will kill you if you try to take it. Literally kill you. Property rights in medieval times were enforced with sharp objects. The few twigs and branches you managed to gather yesterday burned up faster than your hopes for a warm night. Medieval firewood is usually green, wet, or both, which means it burns about as efficiently as trying to start a campfire with lettuce. You spend more energy gathering fuel than the fuel provides in heat, which is a losing game that everyone plays because the alternative is death. But even if you had wood, you'd need to light it, which requires either flint and steel or a burning ember from someone else's fire. Flint and steel are expensive tools that require skill to use, and your hands are so numb that you couldn't strike a spark if your life depended on it, which it does. Your neighbors aren't sharing their fire because they barely have enough fuel to keep their own families from freezing. Medieval solidarity has its limits. And those limits are generally defined by how many people you're willing to watch die to keep your own children alive. So you sit in the dark, in the cold, listening to your stomach rumble and your family shiver, contemplating the mathematical equation of medieval winter survival. Not enough fuel plus too much cold equals everyone dies slowly. Time for the most important meal of the day. Assuming you have a meal, which you probably don't. Winter in medieval times isn't just cold, it's the season when food stops existing and people start making difficult decisions about which family members are most likely to survive. Your food stores, such as they were, ran out sometime last week. The grain you managed to harvest and store has developed an interesting selection of molds and fungi, turning your winter wheat into a biological experiment that could probably glow in the dark. You eat it anyway, because the alternative is eating nothing, and nothing has even less nutritional value. The bread you're choking down is more ice than bread at this point. It's frozen solid, and attempting to bite into it is like trying to eat a brick made of sawdust and disappoint. You hold it against your body, trying to thaw it with your minimal body heat. But all you're doing is making yourself colder while the bread remains stubbornly frozen. Your ale has turned into brown ice, creating a substance that's somehow even less appetizing than warm medieval ale, which is saying something. You chip off pieces and let them melt in your mouth, which at least provides some liquid even if it tastes like frozen despair with hints of spoiled grain. The preserved meat you've been rationing, and I use the term meat generously, has developed a coating of frost crystals that make it look like some kind of medieval Christmas ornament. It's been salted and smoked to the point where it's basically edible leather, and now it's frozen edible leather that requires serious jaw strength to consume. You eat quickly, not because you're enjoying the meal, but because holding food in your frozen hands is causing them to become even more numb. Every bite is a race against your body's complete shutdown, and your body is winning. Work doesn't stop for winter, mainly because stopping work means stopping the activities that keep you barely alive. Today's job is the same as every day's job. Find fuel, find food, and try not to die while doing either. You venture outside into a world that's been transformed into a frozen wasteland that makes Antarctica look tropical. The wind hits you like a physical attack, cutting through your inadequate clothing and finding every gap, every opening, every square inch of exposed skin. It's not just cold, it's aggressively cold, the kind of cold that seems personally offended by your continued existence. The ground is frozen solid, covered with a layer of ice and snow that makes every step an adventure in not falling down and cracking your skull open. You're wearing shoes that are more whole than leather, and within minutes of stepping outside, your feet lose all sensation. Walking becomes an exercise in faith. You hope your feet are still attached and moving in the right direction, but you can't actually feel them anymore. Your job today is gathering whatever combustible material you can find. Twigs, dried grass, animal dung, possibly pieces of abandoned buildings. Medieval fuel gathering is like a treasure hunt where the treasure is anything that might burn for more than 30 seconds. And the stakes are everyone you love freezing to death. You're competing with every other desperate person in the village for the same scarce resources. Old Henrik found a fallen branch yesterday and has been guarding it like it's made of gold, which in practical terms it basically is. That branch represents several hours of warmth, which represents the difference between his family living and dying. Your hands, already numb from cold, quickly become useless for any fine motor control. Picking up small twigs becomes impossible when you can't feel your fingers, and everything you try to carry either slips out of your grasp or cuts your frozen skin on edges you can't feel until you see the blood. Let's talk about the economics of not freezing to death. Because everything in medieval winter comes down to energy conservation. You need calories to keep your body warm, but you also need fuel to heat your living space. But you need energy to gather fuel, but you need food to have energy. It's a circular problem with no good solutions. Your body is burning calories just to maintain basic functions in the cold. Shivering alone can consume hundreds of calories per hour. And your body has been shivering almost constantly for months. You're basically running a furnace that's fueled by whatever food you can find, and you're not finding much food. The fuel you do manage to gather burns inefficiently in your primitive fireplace, which is basically a pile of stones arranged in what you hope is a fire-safe configuration. Most of the heat goes straight up and out through holes in your roof, while the smoke fills your living space, making you choose between freezing to death and suffocating to death. When you do get a fire going, it becomes the center of all family activity. Everyone clusters around it, fighting for position closest to the flames. The side of your body facing the fire becomes uncomfortably warm while the side facing away remains frozen, creating a sensation like being simultaneously cooked and frozen. The fire demands constant attention. Someone needs to feed it fuel, blow on it to keep it going, and make sure it doesn't either go out or burn down the house. Sleep becomes impossible because letting the fire die means waking up to temperatures that could literally kill you. So family members take turns staying awake to tend the flames. You find yourself making calculations that would seem insane to modern people. Is it worth burning this piece of furniture to stay warm for another hour? Should you tear down part of the house to use as fuel? How many possessions are you willing to sacrifice to keep the fire going until morning? By midday, the sun has managed to climb high enough to remind you that it still exists, but don't expect any actual warmth. Medieval winter sunlight is like a beautiful lie. It looks warm and cheerful, but it provides about as much heat as looking at a picture of a fire. You're working outside, and the cold has moved beyond discomfort into the realm of serious physical injury. Your exposed skin is turning white, then red, then a disturbing shade of blue that suggests your circulation has given up trying to reach your extremity. Frostbite isn't just a possibility, it's a certainty. Your nose has stopped producing mucus not because you're feeling better, but because all the moisture in your nasal passages has frozen solid. Your eyelashes are collecting ice crystals from your breath, and blinking becomes difficult when your eyelids are trying to freeze shut. Your hair, what little you can feel of it under your inadequate head covering, has developed a coating of frost that makes you look like a walking snowman. The work you're doing, splitting frozen wood, carrying supplies,
Trying to repair damage to your house becomes exponentially more difficult when you can't feel your hands or feet. Tools slip from your numb grip, and tasks that should take minutes stretch into hours, as you struggle with fingers that feel like frozen sausages attached to your palms. Other villagers are out doing the same desperate work, and everyone looks like extras from a disaster movie. Faces red and chapped from wind, clothes inadequate for the conditions, movement slow and clumsy from cold. Conversations are brief, because talking requires opening your mouth, which lets precious warm air escape and cold air in. The animals, what's left of them, are suffering as much as the humans. The chickens have stopped laying eggs, because they're too busy trying not to freeze to death. The pigs huddle together in piles, and some of them don't wake up in the morning. Even the rats have gotten slower, easier to catch, because they're too cold to run effectively. As the day progresses, you realize that morning was actually the warm part of the day. The afternoon brings new challenges, as the temperature continues to drop, and your body's energy reserves continue to deplete. You've been shivering for so many hours that your muscles are beginning to cramp and spasm. The constant tension is exhausting, and you're burning through what little food energy you have just trying to maintain body heat. Your jaw aches from your teeth chattering, and your shoulders are locked up from hunching against the cold. The search for fuel becomes more desperate and more dangerous. You're now considering burning things that probably shouldn't be burned: pieces of your house, tools you might need later, anything that contains even a small amount of combustible material. The line between useful possession and emergency fuel is getting thinner by the hour.
Your feet have lost all sensation, which means you're walking on frozen stumps and hoping they're carrying you in the right direction. Each step is a small act of faith, and you've started stumbling and falling more frequently as your body's ability to sense balance and position deteriorates. The cold is affecting your thinking as well as your body. Simple decisions become difficult when your brain is focused entirely on the overwhelming sensation of being too cold. You find yourself standing still for long periods, staring at nothing, unable to process what you should be doing next. Your family members are in similar condition. Conversation has stopped entirely, partly because talking hurts your throat, partly because everyone's energy is focused on the basic act of staying alive. You communicate in grunts and gestures, like a family of very cold cavemen. Winter in medieval times reveals the limits of human cooperation. During harvest season, neighbors help each other share resources, work together for the common good. But when survival is on the line, community solidarity develops some interesting exceptions. The village has divided into small family units, each hoarding whatever resources they have and eyeing their neighbors' supplies with increasing desperation. That pile of firewood behind old Martha's house. Everyone knows exactly how much she has and how long it might last. The smoke coming from the blacksmith's chimney. People are calculating whether he's burning more than his fair share. Children who played together in summer now look at each other with the calculating eyes of competitors for scarce resources. Parents who were friendly neighbors a few months ago now cross the street to avoid conversations that might lead to requests for help they can't afford to give. The village's social hierarchy, never very democratic to begin with, becomes even more rigid when resources are scarce. The local lord, warm in his slightly less drafty castle, makes decisions about fuel distribution that mostly benefit his own interests. The church preaches about charity and sharing while keeping their own fires burning bright. You hear rumors about other villages where people have made darker choices. Families abandoning elderly members who consume resources but can't contribute labor. Communities casting out the sick and weak to preserve resources for the healthy. These stories seem impossible, immoral, unthinkable, until you start doing the math on your own family's survival odds. The social bonds that hold the community together during good times stretch and fray under the pressure of survival. Friendship, charity, mutual aid. These are luxuries that become difficult to afford when the choice is between helping your neighbor and watching your own children freeze. As the sun begins to set, and in medieval winter it sets ridiculously early, the temperature plummets from unbearable to potentially fatal. The little warmth that the sun provided disappears entirely, and you're left facing the coldest part of the day with whatever fuel and food you've managed to gather. Your house, if you can call it that, provides shelter from the wind, but not from the cold. The walls might as well be made of tissue paper for all the insulation they provide, and the gaps around the door and windows let in streams of freezing air that cut through the interior like invisible knives. You've managed to start a small fire with the fuel you gathered, and it becomes the focal point of all family activity. Everyone crowds around it, fighting for position, taking turns warming different parts of their bodies. The fire is too small to heat the room, so you're constantly rotating, warming your front while your back freezes, then turning around to reverse the process. Dinner consists of whatever food you've managed to keep from freezing completely. The meal is eaten quickly, in silence, with everyone's hands wrapped around their bowls to absorb whatever warmth the food might provide. Conversations are brief and practical. Who's taking first watch on the fire, whether anyone found additional fuel today, how much food is left for tomorrow. The children, who normally would be active and noisy, sit quietly in the warmth, their energy entirely focused on staying warm. They've learned that excessive movement wastes precious calories, so they've adapted to medieval winter with the stillness of hibernating animals. As full darkness falls, you realize you're facing the longest, coldest part of the 24-hour cycle. The fire needs constant attention. The temperature will continue to drop, and you need to make it through the next 12 hours without anyone freezing to death. Sleep becomes a luxury you can't afford because sleep means the fire dies, and the fire dying means everyone might die. Your family establishes a rotation. Someone stays awake to tend the fire while everyone else tries to rest, taking shifts throughout the night to ensure the flames never go out. Your turn at fire duty is a lesson in medieval resource management. You have a limited supply of fuel and you need to make it last until dawn. Too much fuel burns too quickly and wastes precious resources. Too little fuel and the fire dies, taking your family's survival chances with it. You sit inches from the flames, feeding them twigs and splinters of wood one piece at a time, trying to maintain just enough heat to keep everyone from freezing while preserving enough fuel for the rest of the night. It's like playing a video game where the stakes are everyone you love dying of hypothermia. The fire creates a tiny circle of warmth in an ocean of cold. Beyond that circle, the darkness is filled with sounds that remind you how dangerous medieval nights can be. Wind howling through gaps in the building, animals moving around outside, and the occasional crack or crash as the cold causes something to break or collapse. Your family sleeps fitfully, huddled together for warmth, everyone's breath creating small clouds of vapor that freeze and fall like snow. The children whimper in their sleep, possibly dreaming of warmer times, possibly just responding to the physical discomfort of being too cold. Every hour feels like 10 hours. Time moves differently when you're focused entirely on not dying, and the night stretches ahead like an endurance test designed by someone who hates humanity. You find yourself making bargains with God, promising various forms of devotion in exchange for survival until sunrise, around what you estimate to be midnight. Though timekeeping is approximate when you're focused on not freezing to death, the cold reaches levels that feel personal, like winter has specifically targeted your family for elimination. The fire, despite your careful tending, is struggling. The fuel you gathered is mostly green wood and damp twigs, which burn reluctantly and produce more smoke than heat. The smoke fills the room, making breathing difficult, but opening a door or window to clear the air would let in cold that could kill you. Your watch shift continues, and you find yourself making increasingly desperate decisions about what to burn. That wooden bowl that's been in your family for generations, into the fire, the extra pair of shoes you were saving for spring, fuel, the small wooden cross that hangs by your bed. God will understand. Your family stirs and shifts in their sleep. Everyone trying to stay as close to the fire as possible without actually crawling into it. The sleeping arrangements have evolved into a complex human puzzle, with everyone pressed against each other, sharing body heat and competing for position in the tiny warm zone. The cold has moved beyond physical discomfort into something that feels like a living entity trying to kill you. It finds every gap in your clothing, every exposed inch of skin, every breath you exhale. Your body has given up trying to warm your extremities. Your hands and feet are essentially dead weight, frozen lumps that you hope will work again if you survive until spring. You catch yourself dozing off despite the cold, which is actually a bad sign. When your body stops shivering and starts feeling sleepy in extreme cold, it's beginning to shut down non-essential function. You force yourself to stay alert, feeding the fire and trying to keep your family positioned safely around the flames. The hour before sunrise is always the coldest, and in medieval winter it's cold enough to kill healthy people. Your fire has burned down to embers despite your best efforts, and your fuel supply is nearly exhausted. You're facing the choice between burning something important or letting the fire die. You look around the room at your sleeping family, calculating who's most at risk if the temperature drops any further. The youngest child is showing signs of severe cold exposure, pale skin, slow breathing, and an inability to wake up properly when you shake them. The elderly grandparent in the corner hasn't moved in over an hour, and you're afraid to check whether they're still breathing. The wooden frame of the bed becomes fuel for the fire, then the wooden tools, then pieces of the door. You're literally burning your house to stay warm, which is a perfect metaphor for medieval winter survival, destroying your future to survive the present. Outside you can hear the wind dying down slightly, which might mean dawn is approaching, or might just mean the weather is changing in some new and terrible way. Medieval weather prediction consisted of looking outside and hoping for the best, which is about as effective as you'd expect. Your body has adapted to the cold in ways that would probably concern a modern doctor. Your heart rate has slowed, your breathing has become shallow, and you've stopped feeling pain from the frostbite on your fingers and toes. These adaptations might be keeping you alive, or they might be signs that you're slowly dying. It's hard to tell the difference. The fire flickers and threatens to go out entirely. You feed it the last of your fuel, a piece of the wooden spoon you use for eating, and hope it will last until sunrise. If it doesn't, you'll be choosing between burning something essential or letting everyone freeze. Finally, incredibly impossibly, the sky begins to lighten in the dawn. In medieval winter doesn't bring warmth. The sun won't have any real heating power for hours yet, but it brings the psychological relief of having survived another night. Your fire has burned down to barely glowing coals, but the threat of immediate death has passed. You can see your breath in the early morning light, and ice crystals have formed on every surface in the room, but your family is still breathing, still moving, still alive. The night has taken its toll. Everyone looks like they've been through a battle, which in a way they have. Faces are pale and drawn, lips are blue, and everyone's movements are slow and careful as frozen joints try to remember how to work. The youngest child is alive but groggy, showing signs of mild hypothermia that will require careful warming throughout the day. The elderly family member is breathing but hasn't spoken since last night, and you're not sure they'll recover from this particular assault by winter. You've burned most of your possessions to keep the fire going, which means tonight will be even more challenging unless you can find more fuel during the day. The cycle of medieval winter survival continues. Survive the night, gather resources during the day, prepare for the next night, repeat until spring or death, whichever comes first. Looking around the room at what's left of your possessions in your family, you realize you've made it through one night,
Only about 90 more to go until spring. The mathematics of survival aren't encouraging, but they're the only mathematics you have. As your family slowly wakes up and begins the process of determining who survived the night, and in what condition, you take stock of your situation. It's not encouraging.
Your fuel supply is essentially gone. The few pieces of furniture and household items that you didn't burn last night won't last through another evening. You need to find more combustible material today, or tonight will be shorter and more decisive than you'd like. Your food supply is also critically low. The energy you burned staying warm all night needs to be replaced, but there's nothing to replace it with. You're facing the classic medieval winter dilemma. You need calories to stay warm, but you need warmth to have the energy to find calories. The physical damage from the night is becoming apparent as sensation returns to your extremities. Your fingers and toes are white and numb, showing clear signs of frostbite. Some of the damage might be permanent, assuming you live long enough for it to matter. Your house is now noticeably more drafty thanks to the pieces of door frame and wall that you burned for fuel. The structural damage makes the building less effective as shelter, which means tonight will be even colder than last night. You've traded short-term survival for long-term survival odds, which is the kind of calculation medieval people made every day. Your family members are displaying various levels of cold-related injury and exhaustion. Everyone's immune system is compromised from the stress of extreme cold, which means any disease that comes through the village will find easy targets. Surviving winter isn't just about not freezing, it's about surviving everything else while your body is weakened by cold. Time to start another day of medieval winter survival, which consists of the same activities as yesterday. Find fuel, find food, try not to die. The routine is simple in concept and nearly impossible in execution. You venture outside into a world that seems determined to kill you with enthusiasm. The wind has picked up again, and it's carrying snow that feels like tiny ice bullets hitting your exposed skin. The temperature is still well below freezing and the sun provides light but no perceptible warmth. Your search for fuel takes you further from the village than you went yesterday, because everything close has already been gathered by other desperate families. You're now competing with people from neighboring villages, all looking for the same scarce resources in an environment that's running out of things to burn. The work is exhausting when you're well-fed and warm. When you're malnourished and fighting hypothermia, it becomes nearly impossible. You move slowly, rest frequently, and accomplish in hours what should take minutes. Every task requires maximum effort for minimal results. You find yourself making calculations that would horrify your modern self. Should you spend energy gathering fuel that might not burn well, or save that energy for tasks more likely to contribute to survival? How much of your remaining strength should you invest in activities that might pay off later versus activities that might help you survive today? By now you've learned the harsh mathematics of medieval winter economics. Everything has a cost measured in calories or warmth, and you never have enough of either to pay for what you need. Walking to the forest to gather fuel burns calories and exposes you to cold, but not gathering fuel means no fire tonight, which means death. The fuel you gather is poor quality and burns quickly, providing less heat than the energy you expended collecting it. But some heat is better than no heat, so you make the losing trade. Food is scarce and expensive, but you need food to have the energy to gather fuel. Fuel is necessary to cook food and stay warm, but fuel is also scarce and expensive. Everything you need requires something else you don't have, creating a series of impossible choices. Your possessions become a strategic reserve. Items to be burned or traded for survival when all other options are exhausted. That wooden spoon isn't kitchen equipment, it's emergency fuel. That extra blanket isn't bedding, it's insulation or trade good. Everything you own has become a tool for not dying. The village operates on a survival economy where normal rules don't apply. Price is determined by desperation rather than supply and demand. A small bundle of dry wood might cost a day's labor or a week's food ration. A hot meal might cost items you can't afford to lose, but can't afford not to trade. You find yourself thinking in terms that would seem insane to modern people. How many calories will this activity cost, and what are the odds it will result in enough benefit to justify the expenditure? Is it worth burning this possession to stay warm for 2 more hours? What's the minimum amount of food needed to survive until tomorrow? Let's talk about hunger. Because hunger in medieval winter isn't just about being peckish. It's about your body consuming itself to stay alive, breaking down muscle and fat to fuel the constant energy demands of fighting hypothermia. Your stomach stopped growling days ago, not because you're no longer hungry, but because your digestive system has essentially shut down to conserve energy for more important functions like keeping your heart beating and your brain working. You've moved beyond hunger into a state where your body is rationing every available resource for basic survival. The small amount of food you have is terrible quality, moldy grain, meat that's more salt than protein, vegetables that have frozen and thawed so many times they've achieved the consistency of mud. But you eat it because it's calories, and calories are life. Even when those calories come wrapped in substances that might otherwise be classified as poison. You've learned to eat slowly, not to savor the flavor there isn't any, but because eating too quickly can make you vomit, which wastes precious resources and leaves you worse off than when you started. Your shrunken stomach can't handle large quantities of food, so you eat tiny portions and hope they stay down. The hunger affects your thinking as much as your body. Simple decisions become difficult when your brain is operating on minimal fuel. You find yourself staring at nothing, forgetting what you were doing, unable to focus on tasks that require concentration. Your body is shutting down non-essential functions, and apparently complex thought counts as non-essential. Medieval society, never exactly a beacon of individual rights and social justice, becomes even more brutal when survival is at stake. The social contracts that hold communities together start to fray when following those contracts might mean watching your family die. The village operates under increasingly strict resource allocation, with the strongest and most valuable members getting priority access to food and fuel. The elderly, the sick and the very young find themselves at the bottom of the survival hierarchy, receiving just enough resources to stay alive as long as they don't become a burden. Religious and social obligations become flexible interpretations rather than absolute rule. The church preaches charity while hoarding resources. Neighbors who would normally help each other now guard their supplies with weapons. Family loyalty extends exactly as far as the family's survival chances allow. You hear rumors about other communities where the social fabric has completely broken down. Villages where families have abandoned elderly members, towns where the weak are cast out to preserve resources for the strong, regions where communities have resorted to practices that wouldn't be discussed in polite society, even if polite society still existed. These stories seem impossible, immoral, unthinkable, but as you look at your own family's dwindling resources and calculate survival odds, you start to understand how people might make choices that seemed unthinkable just a few weeks ago. Desperation doesn't make people evil, but it does make them practical in ways that can look a lot like evil from the outside. The local lord continues to collect taxes and tribute, because even in winter power structures must be maintained. The fact that these collections might mean death for some families is less important than maintaining the social order that keeps the lord warm and fed. Medieval winter days are short on sunlight but long on suffering, and time moves differently when every hour is focused on basic survival. What should be a normal day stretches into an endurance test that challenges everything you thought you knew about human limitations. The cold has reached levels that seem designed by someone who actively hates humanity. Your breath forms clouds of vapor that freeze and fall like snow.
Your eyelashes collect ice crystals and your clothes have frozen to your body in places where moisture from sweat or breath has accumulated and solidified. Every task takes exponentially longer when performed with frozen hands and feet. Lighting a fire, which should take minutes, becomes an hour-long struggle with flint and steel that won't cooperate when your fingers can't feel what they're doing. Cooking food becomes an exercise in hope as you try to heat frozen substances with inadequate fuel. The physical exhaustion is overwhelming. Your body has been fighting cold for so long that your muscles are cramped and sore from constant shivering. Your joints ache from the effort of moving in multiple layers of inadequate clothing, and your energy reserves are completely depleted from the constant battle to maintain body temperature. You find yourself stopping frequently to rest, not because you're lazy but because continuing without rest might mean collapsing and not getting back up. Medieval winter survival requires pacing yourself like a marathon runner, except the marathon never ends and the stakes are death.